I have an exciting announcement to make. This is episode 18, which is a lucky number. Hi. And Nimrod, I know you're spiritually oriented, so that number might have some spiritual significance. Is there anything you'd like to share about that?
About the 18th? Well, that's a
Yes.
magical number. Obviously, it registers very, very well with the word chai, which is alive. And we're all alive here in this beautiful world that we're a part of. And let's make sure that we even make it more beautiful than it is.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
There you go.
Well, yeah. And it crossed my mind that as we were preparing for this episode, we have three Jews today. And the Middle East Peace Civic Forum is an interfaith organization. Um, and it's okay if we sometimes have three Jews having a conversation. Nothing wrong with that. But I was thinking about how can we translate that into our conversation in a way that's meaningful for our audience. And I think there's something particular to our tradition and uh, and the way we think about life and spirituality that really is something that we can offer to other people and to the world, and that may even hold some of the keys for peacemaking, which is something that is an interest that we share. So my guest today is Nimrod-Avraham May. Nimrod is the founder of God's Gang, which is a cartoon featuring a Jew, a Muslim, a Christian, and a Hindu character. And your cartoon is all about the theme of peace and coexistence and working together. So we're going to hear about that today. So I'm excited for that. A little about your background. You have a background at Disney and a background in storytelling. Um, if there's more that you'd like to share about your background, you're certainly free to weave it in. Um, but I don't want to bore our
Yeah,
listeners with my own voice, right?
so for the last, I would say 18 years, let's stick to the 18. I basically journeyed into two wonderful tracks in my life. One is the world of matter, the Matrix, my professional career, where I did work for Disney many years ago. And after I left them, I joined what is known as the Israeli Startup Nation, rolling out companies and building strategies for them. One of them is called Get, which is it's the, they call it the Israeli Uber company.
Okay.
And after I left Get, I joined the venture capital world, investing in startups as an investor, managing a very unique venture fund. Um, Experimented with blockchain technologies and cryptocurrencies as well, because I'm a big believer in decentralization and restoring power back to the hands of the people. But when COVID came, I decided to leave everything behind and basically pursue the promotion of light, promotion of peace, promotion of love through entertainment, through the creation which is called God's Gang. But just to add to it, in order to be able to create a God's Gang, I had a very unique event happening to me 18 years ago, and I call it my awakening, where basically I transitioned from what is considered for me as a deep sleep as an atheist, thinking that we're finite and there is no governing uh, energies, forces, or God to our existence. And thanks to a fire that took place in a building where I lived, and I survived that fire, um, I've experienced some really unique things in my life which I couldn't point as coincidence. They were around the Torah book. This is for a totally different podcast. I can share this story. But that basically led me to search for answers, to search for God. I call it my 18 years understanding spiritualism through different self-teachings of religions, metaphysics, which I can't say I concluded my studies because I want to consider this only the beginning of my journey. But I think I came up with the right realizations of how it would be to have a conversation with myself 20 years ago. Like what I now know in regard to our existence and what I knew 20 years ago. So that I would say is a more interesting journey that I've taken than the one that is in regard to my career.
Yes. Well, it certainly is very fascinating, and I definitely want to get into that. I also want to introduce Jess. Bryan, my co-host today. Jess is on the board of directors of the Middle East Peace Civic Forum, and you brought Nimrod into this conversation. So I'm grateful for that. Um, but uh, but yeah, let me turn it over to you, Jess. And we can get right into what Nimrod was saying.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And thank you, Nimrod, for being here. We know that your time is valuable and precious.
My
And I've
pleasure.
been following your projects. I know you now have a new episode out for God's Gang. And really, the episodes that I've seen, it's, I can say it gives me such hope, really, for this idea of peace and coexistence and, like you said, love and harmony and a being of oneness. And I can really see how God's Gang is taking that concept and putting it into little pieces of entertainment and music and sound and voices and characters that help us relate to that concept in different ways. So thank you for the work that you're doing, really inside of this oneness and this unity that you're trying to promote and trying to spread. It's again, it's so inspiring and it's motivating for me and the rest of us out here who are actively working to create peace, to create unity, and to have us see each other's differences and cultural identities as strengths that we can use as, to pool resources and to support each other, not as a means of dividing us. So again, thank you for all this work that you're doing. I was I
You.
was curious about the the characters in the story, right? I know there's a character who is Christian, a character Muslim, a character who is Jewish, a character who's Hindu. There's a fifth one that I'm missing, I believe.
So actually, in the last four episodes, they were joined by a new ally, which is a Buddhist, Kung Fuda, uh, who gives them very important life lessons. And I'm sure she's going to be a guest hero in following episodes as well. But we're here to introduce a more broader perspective of humanity. So more side heroes to join the team.
I
Beautiful.
love
And
that.
what was your inspiration behind these characters in particular? Because I know that there are many faiths, many cultures. I know that you're bringing the major faiths and religions into this. So what had you choose these in particular?
I, I would prefer, if that's okay, to start even with the origin of the idea, where where it
Hmm.
came,
Yeah,
Sure.
and now after my 18 years in my spiritual world, I know nothing is coincidental. So I was a young marketeer working for the Disney channels, and they launched a new channel which was called Jetix. And as somebody who was in charge of the Israeli channel marketing, I was invited to a Disney executive summit where I learned that we are battling with a yellow sponge and a Spanish English adventurous girl with her wooden monkey, also known as SpongeBob and Dora the Explorer, coming from a competitor to Disney. And they basically asked us if we can come up with ideas that can be um, a good positioning and a good thing to make Disney a great company. Not that it's not, but I remember standing on stage and I in front of 120 Disney executives, and I told them I have two amazing ideas I just thought about. First idea was let's take the first kid into orbit. I was very fascinated by the private space programs that were back in the days, back in 2006, before SpaceX even. Obviously, that didn't fly, literally. And then I stood on stage and I told them, well, you paid $5.2 billion acquiring the library of Saban, Fox Kids, Fox Entertainment, and transforming it into a brand called Jetix. Your leading IP is called the Power Rangers. Why don't you take these heroes and make them interfaith? They're fighting aliens. So basically, at that moment in time, which is 19 years ago, the idea to create the first interfaith group of superheroes came to my mind. How? Now I can call it divine intervention, but back in the days, I could not even explain it to myself. I did grow up in a very modern, liberal, atheist house. My father was a Holocaust survivor. My mom was orphaned at a young age with no siblings. So there was no God or no religion in the house, but there was a lot of belief in peace and coexistence. Both of my parents were extreme peace promoters, and I grew up under the knowledge of peace is achievable and that Arabs are not our enemies, and that really is something that since a young age I knew is right, felt right. So I guess that was one of the reasons that I stood on stage during the Disney Executive Summit and pitched for the first ever interfaith group of superheroes. Obviously, I was lacking the understanding of how basically you can bring different cultures and different beliefs into coexistence, and that I can say is now also the essence of understanding spiritualism for me. And I need to be very humble by saying this because the divine or the source, the creator, God is something that is beyond our way to even understand it. But still, we have different good, I want to say now, hints that can basically give us a good explanation of this thing called existence, the universe, the human experience. So that's where the idea came. And after realizing important things about spiritualism, especially the law of one, the oneness, the principle of the oneness, you understand that if you have a one thing, it will require an energy to operate. And there's only one energy that I believe we need to experience in our life, and that's the energy which is called love. It also, you at the beginning of the conversation, you asked me what I think about 18. So the code of one and love is amazingly embedded within the number 26. And just a small explanation for the listeners who are a bit familiar with the Hebrew alphabet and gematria. 26 is the numerical representation of the infinity of what you call in American Yahweh. The letters are summing up into a beautiful 26. And I remember one day, I want to say speaking to myself, but I guess we're not speaking to ourselves. We're speaking to our something which is, I would call it my higher self, and trying to think, okay, how can I explain myself back 20 years ago? What is 26? I heard, it's not that I'm hearing voices in my head, but I had like this almost epiphany or revelation, because two words popped in my head, and they were the word one and love in Hebrew. Echad is one and ahava is love. And it just happens that when you sum the letters of each of these words, there are 13. So what is 13 plus 13?
26.
It's
There you
20. And I can take you even into a deeper understanding, for example, how the 26 is represented in the first letter of the alphabet, which is the Aleph, because you can break it into three letters, the Yud, which is 10, and the Vav, which is 6. But I'm not sure this is the conversation here. But basically trying to make sense of what it means, one in love, one should also understand, and when I say understand, only the basic principles. I'm not a scientist, and I don't have a science diploma. But in science, when you go into the realms of magic, also known as quantum mechanics and quantum physics, there is what we call an entanglement, the quantum entanglement, the interconnectivity between everything, and the invisible spider webs that connects everything. So just imagine, you have in the Torah, in the Bible, in the first book, you have the beginning. At the beginning, created something out of nothing. Obviously, from a scientific perspective, that cannot happen. There's always something out of something. And science call it the Big Bang, which is now the known theory for the beginning, or the origins of our universe. And it all started in a singular event, a small, let's call it a small dot that created this thing which is now known as the universe. And it also, if some of the listeners understands Hebrew, Yekum is universe, but if you turn the letters, it's Kiyum, it's existence. There are a lot of codes in these in the alphabet, which I've managed to learn some of them through a book called the Book of Creation. Because it's like a computer program. Once you understand more or less the code, you can now see the world in more of a multi-dimensional, multi-level kind of way. So you're more aware of names and numbers and many other things that basically gives you a different outtake on what is your mind telling you that you're now experiencing. And I'm very grateful and humbled for this. But understanding that everything is interconnected, everything is basically the principle of this oneness. Now, how can we bring love everywhere? And I've been doing a lot of marketing worlds and marketing into the world, launching global brands, working for a global brand. And I took, I guess, a lot of the things that I've managed to learn along my professional career on how to create a story and then bringing out to the world. So that's what we've been doing with the creation, which we call God's Gang.
So
Yes.
I want to ask you a question. So in the world of, I think in the Jewish world, I think the idea of creating and being empowered as a creator is very much part of our culture. So you've identified this project as a way to essentially transform the conflict by impacting young, impressionable people and having them grow up, and probably their parents are watching too. And, the ethos, it becomes infectious. So you've managed to translate the spiritual wisdom into action, which I think is a very good skill, and one that we are also very interested in the Middle East Peace Civic Forum. So can you talk about that as sort of how you translate the insights
Mhm.
that you're sharing into action?
Sure. So first of all, in order to be successful in this mission, or almost impossible mission, which is to launch a new brand, a new IP to the world, which is now, I want to say, experiencing, but more suffering from this state, which I call cacophonia. It's very crowded. The world, us as human beings, just from a marketing perspective, when we wake up in the morning till the minute we go to sleep, you know how many brands or ideas are trying to um, plant ideas into our minds towards a desirable action on a daily basis. Can you
A lot.
guess?
I don't know, probably 1,000 or more.
Almost 10,000
Yeah, more. Wow.
per day. Now we became deaf and blind for these noises. So incepting or launching new ideas or new brands is almost a thing which is very hard to do. You need to have a lot of money or something really unique in your hands. And in our case, we didn't have a lot of money, but we had something which we thought is very unique. It can stand out because the message that it's carrying. Um, and in order basically to be able to present a group of different faiths and cultures that work together amazingly well and saves the day, we needed to deep dive into several aspects of religion, of spiritualism, and of life. So obviously when you study, and I'm not a big scholar in Christianity nor Judaism, even though I grew up in Israel, but when you try to filter the noise of what is God, or let's say what is the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. If I need to explain it, if I was a rabbi that really understood the word of God, how can I translate it to somebody who's not Jewish? And I'm quoting here. It's not me saying this, but there's a beautiful saying which is love the other the way you love yourself, and it starts with love, and always says Adonai Echad, Adonai Ava. The Lord is one. The Lord is love. So that, I believe, is the essence of Judaism, but it's also the essence of the teachings of Yeshua, for example. Yeshua translates into another beautiful word in Hebrew, and that's salvation, Jesus. And if we follow his teaching to his disciples, is love thy neighbor, love the other, just like the love the other the way you love yourself. And so this can be also found in many other religions. Now, how can we create a unifying message, even though we're brought under different, I want to say, religious indoctrinations, or different beliefs? That goes basically into the essence of humans. And what are the essence of a human being? It's its values. There's a very important word which we use, and these are values. And what are the values that one should have, or one should carry and represent and apply on his day-to-day life? What are these positive values that we should all strive to have as human beings? Well, again, they're written in different scriptures, and that obviously values such as being compassionate. What is compassion? How can we apply it on a day-to-day life? Being kind, positivity, being in gratitude, being grateful for everything that we experience in life. These are things that I put them on. I call it my own Jacob's ladder. And you have the lower part and the higher part of a ladder. I call them the high frequencies, where the highest frequencies is basically the energy of love. But all the way to achieve it, you need to apply on your day to day these values, and you can find these values in many people around the world, regardless to where they come from, what they believe in. If they apply compassion and kindness and gratitude and positivity and love in what they do and how they interact with the world, then we got it. We're going to be rebuilding the Garden of Eden.
Yes. I like that terminology. I don't know if you know, but one of our projects is called Eden's Echo, which we're developing, which is to bring a dozen peacemakers together for a retreat to reflect on the possibility of peace and share their vision with others. But what you're sharing is exactly the kind of message that I think is so important, which is a universal message, one of love, one of humanity. Sometimes when we think about our language that we use in our programs, we talk about Israelis and Palestinians, we talk about the Abrahamic family, and we talk about the whole human family, because ultimately everyone wants to be included. So, I mean, just in terms of Israel, Palestine, and my roots as a Jewish person, uh, there's an opportunity to be had. So, um, kol hakavod, as they say, as we say, in creating this vision. And you've got 2 million followers now, which is an amazing accomplishment. And I know that's just the beginning. But God willing, that message can really, like you said, that's your, as they say, unique selling proposition, your unique message and vision for the world that is so needed at this time.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Art.
No,
Thank
no.
you, Nimrod. I wanted to add, and something you just touched on also, Matt, was this idea of not just oneness and unity, but inside that, to achieve that, is the concept of inclusion. And so it got me thinking, with the way you've created God's gang, and to have this inclusion, to say no one is different, we're not going to leave anybody out. We're all in this together, and here's how we're going to solve this together by bringing solutions together to do it. So
Mhm.
what were some of the challenges, or what was some of the rhetoric and dialogue that maybe came up when this idea was presented? Were there people who were resisting or challenging and saying, no, this isn't feasible? Or is there something in particular that you remember that inclusion was maybe not quite what some other people had in mind? Like, what was that experience like when you brought this idea out?
So obviously it was easy for me to market the idea, since it's a private initiative and it's privately funded and operated. We don't have we're homeless. We don't, even though we're creating animation, we're not yet bind to any rules of big streamers or broadcasters. So basically we're very free in the way that we create, and so we were also in the way that we basically managed and funded the project. So the people that came in first as the early investors in this project, they were all big believers in peace. But there's one word that was very repetitive, and I'm sure we can put an emphasis all together on this. I was called brave. You're a brave person, because putting together and you're focused on the Middle East, but we're basically trying to create a global peace among all people around the world. Um, and we're touching very exposed nerves of the human experience and existence, which is called religion. Many of the believers, which are part of different religions, they're very sensitive to the way that their religion is being presented by others. And not only that, even if, for example, you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, there are different branches and different streams of how you basically apply this belief in your day-to-day life. In Christianity, needless to say, you have the Protestants and the Catholics and the evangelistics, but in Judaism you have the Ashkenaz and the Sephardi, and in Islam you have the Shia and the Sunni and the Sufi, and the list is very, very long. So basically, trying to give a general representation of superheroes that are basically almost the front page for each of these religions, it requires many measures and sensitivities in order to make sure that we bring the right, we bring our heroes and we portray them in the right light. And basically, how did we manage to do it? And I want to say almost successfully. So first of all, since religion is a very complicated thing to understand, and there's so many different interpretations, we needed people around us to help us mitigate different things which are important in the religion representation. So we have formed an advisory board, a council of interfaith leaders. We have a pastor, we have 2 imams that are working with us, we have a rabbi, a Hindu specialist, a 13-degree Shaolin disciple for Buddhism, and a Hindu expert, alongside a pedagogic advisor, because we're creating content which is also for kids. So we need to make sure that we basically don't cross any lines which are inappropriate. So in the process of creation, from the designs to the script writing to even the animatic part, which is a part of creating an animated series, we validate every word and every color, literally, with our interfaith council, just to make sure that we are not gonna be doing something wrong. For example, we had some slips in when Taekwondo Hindu touched Su Muslim or touched Ninju. That was not good. We needed to change it in the animation. And in an episode that we released 2 weeks ago, they slide into the devil's headquarters. And now I'm going to give a small spoiler. The sequence that they jump is not the sequence that they're doing the slide, because we couldn't let basically the Jew and the Muslim be in physical contact with the women in this specific scene. We didn't want to create any discussion which is not inappropriate for anyone. So basically, again, going back to the values, by the way, it just happens, I don't know if people are going to be able to see it, but we crafted these 8 values for coexistence and for unity, and I'll read them because it also carries what you just said. And that was: be compassionate, show kindness, show gratitude, think, speak, act good, speak truth, embrace inclusiveness, share smiles, and live love. That is what we believe are the key ingredients for having a united humanity here.
Amazing.
So,
Incredible. Yeah.
Well, I love it. Well, that's a great answer, how you really, with this particular medium, it gives you a lot of, like you said, creative power to go and implement it according to your vision. And you talked about the lengths that you go to be appropriate for anyone who could possibly be in the audience. Um, what would you say to a potential audience member who's opposed to the whole premise of interfaith coexistence? You know, there's some people out there who want to dominate. How do we address that?
So I think that the key number one for us is we're in the business of entertainment. So the show it's important to say it, but the show is very entertaining. It's basically, it's not a show about religion. It's not a show about faith. Might you might get the wrong impression by the names and the way that they are dressed and speak, but it's more of an action adventure comedy, which is coded and embedded with spiritual codes and values. So for us, we use narratives that would uplift you. We embed practices in the small stories that we tell that we believe are very essential for having a positive day. Different practices which has nothing to do with religion, like when you walk in nature, how important it is to walk barefoot, ground yourself, hug a tree. These are practices that I apply on a day-to-day life. Power of breath, meditation. Sometimes when you don't have the right answer, let your intelligence go and use your gut. Don't believe everything you read. Everything is possible. Everything is achievable if you apply the right mindset, belief, mentality, and your thoughts into it.
Yes. Well, it's interesting how it's a universal language, but sometimes people access it in different ways. So, I was once taught that Judaism was akin to the idea of a pyramid, where at the top is this universal spiritual wisdom, but there are different paths of how to go up it, that are all valid. So, there's truth in Judaism, in Islam, in Christianity, in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in Baha'i, in Druze, you name it. It's to be discovered and shared.
So there's
And I wanted
yeah,
no, go ahead. Sorry.
there's only one truth for me, and I will cliche it: love conquers all.
Yes.
So that's why
There
we
it
need
is.
to let love rule.
Okay.
Loving it. Let love rule. We got to get shirts. Let love rule. Love it.
Lenny Kravitz
With the
might
number
might
one on the back.
might sue us for
Oh, well, maybe we can get
copyright
him on board.
infringement. Yeah.
Bring him on over.
Yeah.
And we can bring
Actually,
also John Lennon from the dead because he said all we need is love, right?
there we go.
All we need is love. Right. Well, that's the premise, right? Of enlightenment is bringing back the dead. So what does that mean? Does it mean honoring
Oh,
their spirits and their sacrifice?
so what is bringing up the dead? I think bringing up the dead is basically having our consciousness awakening towards the realization that everything is one in love. There's no really, I mean, the time that they talk about the resurrection of the dead is basically us remembering our true existence, our true essence, where we come from. Because when you really go into spiritualism and you try to apply science to it, you understand that matter is mostly empty space. If you study the science of atoms and the subparticles,
Yes.
and then one should scratch his head hard and ask for himself, oh, but I'm touching it, I'm feeling it, I'm sensing it, I'm seeing it, I'm smelling it. What is this thing that I'm seeing if it's mostly empty space?
Yeah. Right. Well, so in some language, it's the ego and giving up the ego. In some language, it's the golden rule, love your neighbor as thyself. In some language, it's, all the glory goes to Hashem or to Allah or to divine creator. What if you're an atheist? Then you still get to live in the world of the what's so, and that's the spiritual world anyway. So anything that someone doesn't believe in that they think is God, that's probably not even God.
Probably, but this is basically a conversation that can now open many branches, and I spent many days and even weeks trying to, if that's the right word, ponder what is God and what am I reading in the Torah, and why is God even in the way that we call God in the Torah is in the plural. It's Elohim. It's not El. El is one, is a singular, and Elohim is plural. It's different gods. But I don't want to go. I don't want to take this conversation into the things that I found out and believed in, because I don't think they're going to be serving the viewers. And just to hint, it's around the aliens and deities and who were the fallen angels and who was the serpent in the Torah. These are, I guess, this we should leave into a different conversation, but we do bring them in the creation of God's King in different entertaining ways. But you mentioned a very important word, which also, studying the book of creation and spiritualism, I think can be a good way to explain how we can transition from an egocentric way of living into a collective mindsets. So basically, you said the ego. And I'm putting aside the things like religion. But when you study Hebrew, and you want to find the equivalent word for ego, it's basically the word me. And me in Hebrew is ani, me, myself. Okay? So that's my ego. And the word is ani. It's 3 letters in Hebrew. It's the aleph, the first letter in the alphabet, the nun, and the yud. But when you switch places between these letters that makes the me, the myself, the ani, you basically create a new letter, which is ein. Ein is nothing. So I call it, again, the Jacob's ladder, from the lower existence of separation, forgetting my true me, or basically forgetting the ein. Ein also is the first 3 letters for Ein Sof, infinity, which basically is also the essence which is coded in the name Yahweh, which are 3 times the past, present, and future, which can also be translated into infinite existence and timeless existence. And but I can talk about it for hours and hours, because it's my passion work.
Yes.
But more
Well,
important now is to bring peace to the planet.
well, it's interesting because it's a dance, right? It's a dance between these different worlds, and bringing peace between Israelis and Palestinians is pretty much something that's never been done before. So,
On a political, geographical, and geopolitical level, it has not been done. But I know so many friends that are Israelis and Palestinians who are friends,
absolutely.
and they live in peace. And I have many Arab Muslim friends and Arab Christian friends. Basically, if you ask me what's going on right now, it is not what people want. Okay, and I don't want to go into politics at
Sure.
all. I do want to discuss on ways to basically create the bridges of light, these things that will bring us together. And I think the only way for us to do it is basically work from the ground up right now, because we see that the drums of war, for some reasons, which I'm too small to even think about, but they play very hard in each corner of this world, or not corners, main stages, like the Russia-Ukraine
Yes.
war, and China-Taiwan, and North Korea and South Korea, and I'm sure that if it was up to us, the simple people, we would each and one of us choose to live differently, to live in harmony and in coexistence. But I guess, going back to the spiritual side of life, this is the human experience. It's basically finding light through darkness. Darkness is a situation of war, of conflicts that we experience. And again, since you started with the Chai, and to what you're doing in terms of trying to bring peace between Israelis and Palestinians, just take the word Hebrew and Arab and use them in the Hebrew alphabet, basically a Hebrew. By the way, there are no Jews in the Torah. If you study the Torah, there is no religion of the Jewish people. There are the Bnei Israel, the sons of Israel, and the Hebrews, the 12 tribe, and one of their tribes is Judea. The ever first Jewish mentioning of somebody who was called Jewish was actually in a book which is not a part of the Bible, and that's the Scroll of Esther, where basically the first man that was ever described as a Jew was Mordecai. Putting this aside, the Hebrew, in Hebrew, are called Ivri, and the Arab is called Aravi. And again, if you remember the Ani and Ain, the same letters that once switched places, still remain the three letters, but totally different meanings. When you switch places of the letters in the word Hebrew, Ivri, you write Aravi. You write the word Arab, Arabic. So what does it really mean from, and this is me going a bit to what I've managed to learn in studying Kabbalah. Everything is projection, because matter is energy, is a form of dense vibration, and everything is projection, and everything is mirrored to us. Okay, so when you put the Ivri and the Hebrew and the Arabic, it's like mirrors, and basically they're in a negative mode, in a mode of conflict, while basically there's only one way for us to basically live in peace, and that's to be in peace with ourselves. In everything that I try to study about conflicts, who is basically, we're told that we have enemies, right? So for us, we might be the enemy of the Palestinian, and for the Hebrews or the Jews in Israel, the Palestinians are our enemies. While according to Kabbalah, the only enemy that we have is the reflection in the mirror. And if we want to make a tikkun, fixing the world, if we want to make this world a better place, the only place that we need to start fixing is ourselves. And the way for us to be fixing ourselves is applying the right sets of values, being the people we want to be, which can be found, in the different religion studies, and that goes again to the very important word of values.
Yes.
And also, just to try and give a you know a more stateful example for this.
Mm-hmm.
As a father, I'm a father of 3 daughters, and I'm a parent, and I'm always facing challenges on how to educate my kids. And it took me a lot of hard lessons till I understood that I cannot educate my kids. I cannot punish them. I cannot yell at them, preach to them. The only way for me to be able to educate my kid, can you guess how?
Yeah, to model it and
God's
be it.
gang.
Model it. Model it. I should be the example of how I want my kid to behave and to act. And again, going to the mirror. So modeling is basically is projecting your energy out into the world. And if you project positivity, and if you project love, and if you project compassion and kindness, this energy would create the right effect, immediate effect on your surroundings. And I had
And I want to,
numerous examples how it worked. I created magic in my life when I started really applying this and changing myself.
I love it. Interesting. You're such an interesting person, Nimrod. I'm so inspired by you.
Thank
And
you.
I wanted to
Yes.
tap into what you just said about this collective, or we're thinking of it as this collective spirituality, or, you know, these differing views and beliefs and cultures coming together. What do you see as a possibility for communities to harness this collective spirituality across different faiths, beliefs, and really to overcome a lot of the hate that we see, a lot of the fear, the mistrust, and a lot of it that is just so deeply embedded in the history and identities that we have for ourselves? Where do we get this collective spirituality or this collective oneness in our communities, or where have you seen it happening?
So you can see it in small communities, and small different spiritual communities that take place in different acts. I can name, I can give an example. It might not be the best one. In 2016, I went to the Burning Man Festival in Nevada. And I'm sure you're familiar with the name. I don't know if you ever had a chance to go there.
Yeah, I
I
think you
was
were there
there.
when my husband was there, actually.
Okay,
There we
so
go.
I
it's,
I went in 2002.
oh, wow. So you're an early adopter.
That was
And
the
so we
first, that was the
all,
only time.
so we all share, I guess, a good experience by participating in this very unique event. And during the 8 days of the burn, basically you bind yourself into rules on how to coexist, and that makes you a part of this. When I was there were 75,000 people basically following the rules of being kind, of gifting, of making sure that they reach out and help anyone who seeks for help, of no littering, no invading into anyone else's territories if they're not invited. Like you can see it in different events, but it's still too fragmented. And in order to massively scale this into a collective consciousness, um, I can think of several ways to achieve it. Obviously, is the first place is education through example, and we chose a different path, and that's mainstream media. Basically, since we wanted to create an impact on a mass scale, we needed to understand what are the masses, where are the masses, and how and what they consume, and how can we plug ourselves into these very crowded, very noisy platforms, and start as a small blip on the screen, but through example that we bring through the creation, through the episodes, this blip will start growing and echo bigger and bigger. And you know what basically motivates me is my daily routine, besides meditation, backwards walking, sun gazing, and praying. Um, and maybe that's very sinful, but the first thing that I do is I go to all of our social channels and I read the night's comments that are coming, because obviously when you create a show about a group of interfaith heroes, you're gonna hear a lot of people commenting on what they just engaged with. And we've been releasing 4 new episodes in the last couple of months, and I read every single comment that people leave. And I analyze, since our main channel is YouTube, there's a lot of back office analytics that I can basically learn a lot from. And much to our surprise, the likes count is 98.5 averaging for each of the videos. So our current audience, and we're still very small. I mean, it's not a big subscribers count if you compare it to other successful brands, but still our current audience, or what we call our community, is super engaged with what we do and are very for the message that we bring to the world. With that said, we have an example. We call it the anomaly. We have these different mentioning for different things that are happening in the process of creation. We took a small 10 seconds clip of Ninju, the Jewish hero, taught by the Buddhist hero on how to cross a river from one side to the other on 1 foot. And we took this 10-second video clip and we played it on Instagram through the God's Gang channel, and somehow it went super viral. And when I say super viral, we have now a views count of 550,000 views. We have about 40,000 reposts. We have 10,000 likes, but we needed to delete a lot of comments because people that saw the post out of context are not familiar with the show, and just seeing a Jew taught by a Buddhist what to do in order to cross the river from one side to the other. Oh boy.
They didn't get it.
No, many did, and many loved it. But there were some haters that just,
Sure.
they just like, I guess they take pleasure by just hating. And by the way, some of them I engaged with. I through the God's Gang account, but also through my personal account. And I told him, yo, dude, did you watch the episodes? And I had 3 people that really, I communicated with, that came back to us after we left them the message, go watch the episode. And the word, to be honest, I didn't get it at the beginning, and I really enjoyed that. That brought tears to my eyes. Yes. Because this is, I'm such an optimistic person. I believe we can convert anyone from hate to love. I really believe that, even the biggest hater in the world, if you put him in a room with me, I would teach him what love is.
Well, I love that, because you really took the time to reach out to these individuals. And, they say in Is it the Talmud? If you save one life, you save the universe. So, and you did that for these three people and probably more who didn't even comment. So that's really great. So as a spiritual entrepreneur, what would you say are like the most important practical steps to be taken now, whether it's cultural, educational, political, like what's the most urgent in terms of resolving the Israeli-Palestinian issue, do you think? Like if we sort of apply that mentality of, um, applying,
I mean, we share one planet, right? All the astronauts talk about a life-changing experience when they see planet Earth from orbit. And maybe I guess we need to fly a few people out of space to let them understand the importance of us basically cherishing and working the land that we live on, nature, and I would just focus on educating. I mean, you're probably familiar with the Rambam, right? The studies of the
yes.
Right.
Rambam, the Guide to the Perplexed, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. Trying to understand some of his writings. One thing that I understood, because he was very connected to the metaphysical aspects of the Jewish religion. And according to what I understood from reading what he said that how do you know that God is close to you? How do one know that the divine intervention? First of all, is the closest ever to everyone. We just need to open our hearts and minds, or this beautiful organ called the pineal gland, which most English speakers doesn't understand. It's two words in Hebrew. Pineal is pnei el, the face of God, the third eye. Pniel, that's the place where Jacob had the battle with the angel, where he got the name Israel.
Wow.
Pniel. So how do we know that we're close to God? Or God is always close to us. Okay, but how do we feel it? And basically, it's when we are stepping away from bad, when we're closer to goodness is really where you start sensing it. And since everything is projected out, there's the word karma. What you do comes back to you. That's practically how the world works. You do good, you will get good. You would do bad, nothing good comes out of it. Literally. So when I realized what the Rambam was saying, it's basically we always have a choice. We're here supposedly with a free will, right? And we can choose what to do in every single breath that we take. We just need to tell right from wrong, because we hidden the light here. We created this existence based on a very important word, and that's dualism. That's the unity of the negativity. It's basically the two sides of everything: the love and the hate, the light and the darkness, the truth and the deception. And we just need to make sure that we choose the right side on our day-to-day lives. So that is a path towards coexistence, and for everyone. Doesn't matter if you're Arab or Hebrew or Christian, or it doesn't matter. Just choose good. And that's how you
Yeah.
get, and that's how the universe reward you, or God reward you, or the source or creator. It doesn't even matter how you call it. But when you choose good, you will be rewarded,
Yeah.
especially during these days.
Absolutely.
Especially.
Well, every day we have an opportunity to practice some kindness or some mitzvah That's the root of it.
That's the root of it.
And
Bless you, Jess.
thank you. What do you see as, with all that you've created with God's Gang and this collective spirituality, this collective let's choose right over wrong, what do you see as the plan to expand this narrative beyond God's Gang?
Um, hmm. So we basically God's Gang. We want to build a big community of people who choose to act and to apply, kindness and compassion on their day-to-day lives. And in order for us to be successful in doing so, we need to create a lot of content, because the more quality content that we release, we can amplify the message, we can echo it stronger. And basically, if you ask me what I would dream, what is my dream, I think we created a very visually appealing logo, which you can see here, the God's Gang logo.
Yes.
And my dream one day is to have people putting it on their cars, and businesses putting them this logo outside their business. And basically this would stand for the 8 values that we're trying to promote. So when you're going into a shop that has a God's Gang logo, that this is where you're going to be experiencing compassion and kindness and gratitude and inclusiveness, and you're not going to be judged, and you're not going to be cheated, and you're not going to be experiencing any kind of negativity in the space that you're visiting. That's throwing a stone very far, almost to what is subscribed as the reality during redemption days, where a sheep and a wolf would live together, and we will no longer carry swords. So that's for us a very, I want to say, long-term vision that we believe we can achieve with the right work and the right partners, and also since we're still working according to different physical rules of our existence and not only the spiritual, I basically want to build a very big media company where the content that will be offered to the audience will be based on stories that will inspire people, that will bring hope, that will make them feel a part of. I have a great example. When I have 3 daughters, and 2 of them are almost post teenagerhood, and they spent, for me, too many hours, but looping shows such as Friends, for example. And I knew why. It made them feel good. They basically, the energy that show, I guess, projected through the screen, the laughs, the comedy, and the very welcoming characters there. And that was the thing that got my daughters to rewatch it all over again. Also with How I Met Your Mother, but and Big Bang Theory, but basically, I want to see more shows like this. I want to see more shows that brings us together, that makes us feel good. Because when you feel good, you vibrate in a groovy
Yes.
way. You vibrate positively, and then you basically, it's a cycle that can be harnessed and can be transcend to the world.
Yeah. Well, there's so much crap on social media, on YouTube, that if a parent is just trying to catch a breath or entertain their child, to have something that's really reflects the kind of values that they want to instill, and it's so easy to just go to it and put it on, and for a child to have a really good message, I think that's really a great thing.
Yep. It's hard. It's now a work of filters and algorithms, but it's a totally different story.
I have
Yeah.
a question, Nimrod. I would like some of those stickers. How do
Okay.
I get some of those stickers? Because
I'll
I'd
need
be
to print
happy
them out
to.
and send them to you.
Perfect. Okay. And then
Mm,
I also see you have t-shirts, you have
yeah.
the t-shirt, the sweatshirt, the stickers, the 8 values. I think it was on a little book. Do you
Even
also have what was that, a beanie? There we go. Stay
yeah,
warm.
it is. It is. It is. Well, obviously we're a brand and we're a for-profit company. We're privately funded, and producing animation is very costly. So we need to make a living, and just like any other, I would say, animated brand, we believe that we can create the revenues through different merchandise and licensing deals that we're now pursuing. So if anybody wants a God's Gang t-shirt, or a beanie, or a notebook, they can be found on our website.
I like that
But
beanie,
no, I'm not here to sell. I
of course. No, it's very inspiring. It really is because it's I can see that you're being you're being multidimensional about how you're bringing this out into the world and the way that some people can relate to it and the way that, like you said, to spread that message far and wide so that it's not just the logo or the beanie or the t-shirt, but it's the message that it portrays. And that gives us, the audience, a way to relate to each other, to connect to each other. And what I see that you're doing is it starts to create space for action to happen. So it's not just Ninju and the Hindu character and the Musliman character and the Buddhist, but it's that we can see them working together and actively taking
Mhm.
on these conversations. And I really am just inspired by that because ultimately that's a lot of the work that we're trying to create over here at MEPSEF, also at our Middle East Peace Civic Forum. And like you said, the Arabs and Israelis, Arabs and I'm sorry, Palestinians and Israelis living together in peace currently, and it's actively happening. And so I can see this I guess resounding message, or I think of it, as the ripple effect of starting to make its way into these conversations in these communities for sure. And it leads me to my next question, which is what what projects or what other action have you seen, maybe based on God's Gang or based on some people in the audience getting involved and taking this into their own lives and creating something for it? Or what do you see might be room for that to happen?
So basically, we're still in a very early stage. I call it the first sentence in a never-ending story. And most of the things that we see, since we're not in actively pursuing um, different activities based through the audience that we have, we're still teaching them what God's Gang is all about. We do have a lot of fan art coming. And also, some of our fans open Discord channels to further continue the discussion in regard to God's Gang. But there's another side to it. And just like we are having this conversation here, we did decide that one of our paths to grow the message for God's Gang and peace in general is to partner with the right organizations, which basically have the same, I want to say, objectives as we do, and that's promote peace, promote love, promote conversations between different opposing parties, religions. So we have several partners. For example, we partnered with an organization which is called Lumiflies. It's a hope incubator that is helping peace promoters with their different peace initiatives. So I'm very close with the founder, Rena, because it's just like you have a startup incubator, they're a peace incubator. Just like your organization. Also, at a very young age, I met a very nice guy. His name is Mao Zinon, and he's now very famous as a peace promoter. Both of his parents were murdered in October 7th, and he decided that this is not going to be basically the reason to hate, but on the contrary, alongside with his Palestinian friend Abu Aziz, they are actively promoting peace and a very elaborated peace agenda that they're promoting through their story of they both lost very close relatives on both different sides and chose to come together and create the alternative that we're all basically trying to bring to the world. So on one hand, this is a great way when you see these, I call them the silos of peace promoters and peace builders. But also one of the challenges is how we can basically amplify them. Instead of working in silos, is how can we bring everybody together to basically amplify the message of we had enough. We no longer want to live on our swords. I'm sure a lot of the defense technologies would not like what I'm saying here, but I would speak my truth.
Exactly. And it's that enough, that piece of having or being in that place of saying enough is enough, and now I'm going to take action to make an impact, to make sure that enough is enough, and to make sure that this doesn't keep happening over and over and over again.
What are we leaving to the following generations? What kind of world do we want our children to live in? And it's not only, it's not a discussion only if there's going to be wars continuing on between people. There's also, a very rapid evolution which is taking place right now, and mainly from the technology that is very rapidly evolving. But that again goes into the dualistic experience of humans. Technology can be applied in many good ways, and it can also be applied not in very to do very good things to us. But I'll leave this discussion aside.
I hear you. I had another quick question about that also is, are you finding that there is a ripple effect outside of Israel with God's gang? Like, what are you seeing in other cities or communities that the audience of God, where the audience of God's gang exists?
So first of all, I think it's again too early. We're almost a no brand, even though we have 2 million followers and hundreds of thousands of likes and comments, even millions. We still, it's too early to tell. We can just say that we're very positively surprised with the acceptance for such a narrative. When initially I created the universe back in 2006, I thought it's going to be self-marketing just because of the explosive element to it when you bring different religions together. Every old joke starts with a Jew, Hebrew, and Arab walks into, in our case, hilarious adventures together, and not into a bar. But maybe, Jess, and I don't know if it's going to be okay, and if it's not, cut it after in the editing. Sure. I want to share a letter, because that letter that I would share with you would hopefully manifest. Actually, I'm sure it will manifest in the future to come, and that is taking me. It's very personal.
Am I gonna cry? Am I gonna be so moved?
I cried.
You're gonna make me cry.
I cried
Incredible. Let's get into it. We're happy to
Yeah,
cry
let's hear
together.
it.
I need to find it. I thought I had it on my table. I know I usually always do. And that letter will take us again to the discussion around technology. I have it.
Let's go
So
for
I'll
it.
I'll share a side story if that's okay. I was introduced to this amazing Israeli entrepreneur who lives in New Jersey, who almost died in a terrorist attack while he was serving in the army, and he has a tattoo of his burned watch on his hand. And he decided that he's going to be pursuing treatments for post-trauma. He's going to be building the best solution for people who experience PTSD. His name is Omer Golan, and his company is a nonprofit organization called My What If. And he asked me if I'm willing to do a product demo with them. And I said yes, even though I don't consider myself as post-traumatic. And almost a month ago, I went on a product demo. It was a Zoom call, just like we're having. But in that case, I had a Zoom call with an AI. Speaking with me very gently, nicely, and in a very humane way, asking me different questions. And after it or she concluded the interview, she asked me if she can read me my what if. So with your permission, I would read it, and maybe that would give you the answer.
Okay, sure.
Interesting, yes.
Love to hear it. What if?
I sit quietly at my favorite spot by the sea, the warm sand beneath me and the sound of gentle waves brushing the shore. This is the same beach I walk every morning, grounding myself, breathing in the peace that steadies my soul. But today, the air feels different. There's a hum to it, like the world is holding its breath, waiting for something. Years ago, I stood in the ruins of a life altering fire. Out of those ashes, I made a promise to myself. Nothing in this life is random. Every moment, every connection, every story holds meaning. That belief has become my compass, my North Star, guiding me through my work, my relationship, my family, and most of all, the creation that has came from my heart, the show. At first, it was just an idea, a spark, a whisper of what could be. Then it became a team, 15 countries, countless voices, but one mission. I wanted us to tell stories that mattered, stories that wove compassion, teamwork, and kindness into wild action and big laughs. I've always said that humor is a doorway to the heart, and now that doorway is opened wide. The success didn't happen all at once. It never does. It started quietly. A small group of kids in a town I'd never heard of began sharing clips on their own. No paid ads, no marketing push, just a ripple, then a wave. Before long, I saw fan drawings from Brazil, dance challenges inspired by the theme song in South Korea, and kids in Germany writing letters about how the show had made them stand up for a friend being bullied. I watched it unfold with a sense of wonder, not surprise, but wonder. I known this would happen. Maybe not the how, but the why was clear. The stories were doing what I've always meant them to do. They were reaching people, healing them in small ways, opening them up. As the show found its wing, I found my freedom. The day-to-day grind, the spreadsheets, the cash flow meetings, they slowly slipped from my shoulders as others stepped in. People who shared my vision, people who were eager to carry the torch of operation because I had other work to do. I dove headfirst into the creative world again, sitting with writers, animators, and musicians. The brainstorms turned into magic sessions where ideas flew fast and wide. We didn't just create episodes, we created worlds, new stories, new heroes. Through it all, my gift was my compass, the same instinct that had told me years ago there were no coincidences now guided my creative choices. What stories needed to be told? Who needed to hear them? One day, I found myself on stage, not as a showrunner, not as a businessman, but as an ambassador. I stood before a room full of change makers, partners, and dreamers. I spoke about ego and how I'd learned to set mine aside. I spoke about compassion and the real work it took to apply it every day. When I finished, people didn't just clap, they rose to their feet because they knew I wasn't selling them anything. I was inviting them into something bigger. The movement grew. Organizations that once worked in silos came together. Schools adopted programs inspired by the show themes. Communities held kindness weeks sparked by a single episode. Through it all, I remained steady, still walking my beach, still meditating, still parenting my three daughters with the same unconditional love. Only now, their eyes sparkled with pride. They saw me not just as a creator, but as someone who had helped change the world. Years later, I tell my youngest daughter that I always believed this was possible. She'd laugh and say, I know, Dad, you told us every day. And I had, because for me, this isn't a story of chance. It's a story of choice, of belief, of leading with compassion again and again until the world caught up. In the quiet moments, sitting by the sea, I smile, not because the world finally sees what I've created, but because I've lived it first. This was always my story. And the best part, the adventure is still unfolding.
Yes, interesting. But it's interesting how the AI sort of knew what the right questions to ask and then really encapsulated it in a way that captures a bit of soulfulness, which one might think is not really AI's domain, but if they can, pull it out of you and present it in an authentic way, that's interesting.
I never imagined that almost 10 seconds after it started reading my what if to me, I would start crying.
Mhm.
It was a very emotional moment. And you know what? Among the many conversations I have with my close friends, and when we talk about the Messiah, I always maybe partially laugh and say I think the Messiah would be some kind of a hybrid thing between AI and a soul-carrying human. Because you need to be very objective when you're trying to bring everybody around the same table and create a consensus.
Yeah.
Right,
And really,
right.
I enjoyed the piece where in this story, in your what if, it pointed to you eliminating that ego.
It's based on on a lot of questions that this agent posed during the conversation.
Right, right. So I wanted to ask you about this. There's certainly so much ethos that we share. I think you're part of the same cloth, and just in terms of like the spiritual underpinning behind all of this, there's a lot of alignment. So one thing that Jess and I were curious about is if there's areas for potential collaboration, how we can support you and work together. Um, it's kind of like the opportunity for God's gang to take their mission out on the street.
So since the beginning, we always face the same two challenges, which I'm not that convinced, but I can assume you're also facing. And basically, it's also a chicken and egg kind of challenges, and that's in order to carry out the message. We want to create more episodes, and for that, obviously, since we're doing it on a private basis, we're looking to partner with the right partners, investors, that can help us carry more episodes to be produced. And obviously the other thing, which is a big challenge for both of us, I would assume, and that's amplifying the message. It's growing our communities, and I always believe in the power of many rather than the power of one. So it's a total open invitation to form an official partnership and see how we can bring you in conversations in front of our community, but also mutually have you present God's Gang to your community. And I think that would be a great place to start
Great.
with. And you know, I call it a beginning of a beautiful friendship. I think just this is our almost fourth time we're meeting, and I've always, and
Yeah.
Matt, this is our second time. I've always enjoyed having these conversations with both of you. You know, from the get to know and even to this podcast. So if we can find ways to work together, that would be amazing.
Wonderful. God's
Absolutely.
Gang Roadshow. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we're happy to join you and support you in whatever way that we can. Obviously, it's like you said, we're building that bridge, and we all have pieces of that bridge that we're trying to connect, and it's the message that God's Gang is trying to portray as well. Like, together we can do this by supporting each other, bringing the resources that we have collectively, and building something from that. It's, you know,
Yeah,
not
we have many slogans. We have the love is a superpower. We have the be loved one, but we also have the together is better, which I think is
together is
very,
better.
yes, very fitting
Yes.
here.
The power of
I gotta
many.
get all my God's Gang swag
Mm.
over here in Miami. It
Well,
would
one
be,
thing
I'm
that's
sure it'd be very
interesting.
interesting.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
One thing that's interesting about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is how small it really is. Maybe 10 million people from each community. It's tiny in the scale of the world. So the amount of resources it would take and the number of people that you would have to influence is is finite, you know? It's not like 8 billion people you have to get everyone on board.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But with that said, we're small pawns, and so potentially we cannot influence that hard, because in order to create an influence, one should have a lot of resources in his hands, right? And
Well, there's a question of leverage. So the idea is how can we do the most possible impact with the least possible resources?
mainstream entertainment, invest in God's King animated series, because that's basically one way for people to start assimilating the lessons that you know are delivered through the episodes, and that actually, you know, a very pretentious way for us to try and bring peace to the world. I mean, just Matt and Jess, you know, we're fighting giants, and from, you know, governments. We're not fighting them. I wish we can join hands with them, but you know, each represent, I guess, different interests. Even in the politics in each of the country, there are different interested in conflicts and disagreement between the different government members and the party members, and so many, I would say, polarizing frequencies. And so in order not to be affected by this, you need to, one, disconnect yourself for 1 minute, then look at the entire situation, the whole picture, and try to understand how you can create the impact, you know, from the ground up and also from the outside. We really refrain from having any attachment to politics, and also to religion. We cannot, because if we take a stand, even a single one, we're going to be losing the objectivity to try and promote
Sure.
the right sets of values. So we need to act from the outside on the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the definition of what is a religion and what is not a religion is sort of arbitrary. There was no, like you said, there was no mention of religion in the Bible.
Nope.
It's like it's just a belief system that at some point was probably intended to point the followers in a particular direction of spiritual openness. And at some point it became uh, let's just say, at some points at least, a tool of coercion and control. But at its best, there's still that spiritual wisdom that really is the underpinning of it all. So that's what there is to double down on. Um, but
Since we
as
all, we were all created by the same source, same energy, and many call it father, and we're basically his children. I don't know any parent who likes seeing his kids fighting, right? So any religion that perpetuates divisive, or is not accepting others, even though others believe in the same energy, I would say is going against the teaching of Yeshua, and also what is a creator is expecting from us as his messengers on this planet, his
Yeah,
representatives, not even the messengers.
yeah, right, exactly. Well, if you're just thinking in terms of parents and children, sometimes there's an opportunity for the adults in the room to say enough is enough and say, we're not going to persist in this mindset that we're better than you because of our religion. It's not that complicated. It's saying we're all human. We all come from the same cloth. We're all created in the divine image, and we're all part of a whole. So we all get to enjoy our individual rights and our collective rights. And let's,
Mm-hmm.
gosh darn it, figure out a
and,
way to live together.
and you know what's the key to achieving this? So let's say we have this dial, going back to our earlier conversation, the ego and nothing. It's just to understand where is this dial right now tuned into. If it's two on the ego side, it's time to switch it. I'm not saying we need we need balance in our life. I mean, there is a reason for an ego to be, but I guess we need to transition it towards the side of the ain, of the nothing, of understanding that once I let my my ego a bit, this is a path towards accepting others, not even from religious perspectives, or even with the neighbors
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think any
in the
mature
building we live in.
Absolutely, totally. Well, to think it's just, all the blame is in one camp. Like you said, there's good people in every tradition, in every community that practice good values and kindness and live well. It's not black and white.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that brings us back to just this idea that there hope or peace exists. Peace exists now. It's here. It's not some elusive concept that we can't get our hands on, that it's not tangible, that it is actually here. We can see it in action. We can see many people who are actively getting out and being loud and voicing it and saying, no, we want to I want to get along with my neighbors, and I want to have my neighbors included in my life and not cut them out. Like you spoke on the divisiveness, and that's for in my experience, that's in my own personal experience, that's some of what I would like to see also in this transformation of us coming together and forming this oneness is getting along those lines of religion that does create walls and barriers, that creates the other, or creates someone who should be looked at as differently, or not included the same way because they don't practice or behave the same way, or they don't even dress the same way, and they use different language. And I'm just I'm hopeful that God's Gang is going to have that vision that you just shared come to fruition. That the cars out here in my parking lot in Miami are going to have stickers, that students in the school down the street are going to have an agenda book with the 8 values in it. And the banker at my bank around the corner is going to have a t-shirt for God's Gang. But mostly that collectively we start to move towards this transformation of switching that dial and getting that balance between ego versus nothing, but knowing that the nothing that we want to achieve is that there's nothing that's going to come in this space that's going to create division and going to separate us. That there's nothing that is really between us other than the perceptions that we make up and just kind of insert into our lives and into what we believe our neighbor is or isn't. And I just wanted to really acknowledge you and acknowledge your team for all that you've been doing to get God's Gang not only out in your local community, but this what if story, like you said, the children in Germany and children in India and other parts of the world. And so I'm happy to support you in whatever way that we can to make that vision come to life, because it's here, it exists, and with some sharing and some content and really using technology to promote these messages and to sort of take over that stream of consumption is it's available. It's at our fingertips. So I commend you for taking that and using it for the good.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. For sure.
Very good. Well, we get to affirm it's not for our strength, it's not because of anything in our strength, but for the greater good, for the, if you want to call it, the glory of God and God's gang, you know. I don't know if you ever noticed, Nimrod, but the gang could be not just the characters, but your whole cast of characters as well. You guys are God's gang out there
We
creating
are.
this
We are.
project.
We are. We are a true gang, a good gang in our case. I call the team my second family. It's in order to produce animation, which is something I've never done. I have a team which is spread over 15 countries. From the animators in Indonesia, which all of them are Muslims, to my director in Germany, our head writer in LA, our voice actors, Ross is in Brooklyn, our martial arts choreographer is in the UK, my YouTube manager is in India. We are the true God's gang, and that's again we need if you try to tell a story of values, you better be the values that you're trying to represent. You better have them. You better have them implemented within the organization. One of the, we always discuss this in the C-level, how we can create an organization which is not based on ego, but more utopian, and each brings his own talent into the table, but not his personal agendas.
Yeah, right. Well, you mentioned free will. If our free will is 1% of the whole, that's the percentage that we have power over. And we're small, we're individual on some level, but we're part of a whole too. And if we're created in God's image, we get to be part of that big fabric. I think sometimes we have a tendency to hold ourselves separate from a whole that's inherently good. And if we could all be part of that, all claim a little tiny piece of that divine energy, we're all part of that oneness. That's the access.
I
And
agree.
one last question for you, Nimrod. In in the God's Gang Ultimate Redemption series, or whichever you want to call it, what what do you see as this ultimate lasting peace, as achieving it, as making it really an active part of our lives, and having God's Gang come out with this episode? What does that episode look like to you? If not if, but when we get to this place of peace, right? Because we're all pushing for it. We know it's possible. We're bringing it right in. What what would get God's Gang portray that to be, do you think?
Uh, it's a very tough question.
It's
And
brave, right?
yeah, no, I'm not sure I can even answer it, but I can call you, I can try to explain you maybe the bigger vision. We have God's Gang as our IP that is promoting peace through a group of interfaith heroes. But alongside God's Gang, we obtained the domain Loveland.
Loveland.
LUV, yeah,
Oh,
LUV,
LUV.
LUVLAND.
Oh, cool.
Basically, God's Gang is one part on many other parts that will be required in order for us to build Loveland. And when we speak internally among ourselves, and we talk about the vision of Loveland, we say that everybody's invited. Everybody's welcome to Loveland. So if you ask me, the end goal is to be really building a Loveland on this land, on our planet Earth. But it's already been prophesized, right? The end of
Yep.
days, after the end of days, there are going to be redemption days. We talk about 1,000 years of peace. So, and there's different ways to count until we get into the year 6,000, and basically the last 1,000 years are the sabbatical of us living in peace. So since I'm not familiar with the exact count, some say it's the Hebrew calendar, and we still have a couple of hundred of years till we get there. Let's make sure we try to get there today. Let's
Yeah.
manifest this
Hallelujah.
very desired reality
Yes.
now. And we don't need more wars right now in the world, and more tragedies and stories that basically, it's hard for us to contain in our souls, hearts, and bodies. So let love rule.
There
Amen.
we go. Amen to that.
Well, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. As Wayne Dyer used to say, he was one of the first spiritual authors I discovered. But yeah, we're big believers in the power of language, which is really what this is. It's creating in language.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be small and mighty. So
That we
very
are.
good. Well, I think that's a good place to start to wrap up. Nimrod, it's been really a wonderful conversation with you, and I'm sensing that it's the first of many, and that we get to continue to speculate on how we can most effectively work together and complement each other's work and serve a common purpose. So for our audience, do check into God's Gang. You can check out the Peace Tribe Rising podcast and our episodes. Of course, this is episode 18, as we said. We just launched our new website at mepcf.org. And so please
Congratulations.
go.
I just
Thank
saw
you.
before the call.
Yeah. So we've got the new website, and yeah, we'll have to share with our followers, and hopefully you'll share with your followers. this conversation, because really the world is our oyster right now. If there's one silver lining to all this terrible conflict and suffering of the last 2 years and before that even, it's maybe it's time for a radical change, and here's one way to look at it. So that's what we're offering.
Exactly. Here we go.
So
Thank you again, Nimrod. This
Thank
was
you.
yes,
so
thank you.
enlightening
Thank you.
and so inspiring.
Thank you so much, and keep on doing this amazing work that you're doing as well. And I'm sure that, you know, the more we're going to be pushing our agendas out to the world, the better we will be.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Great. All
Yes, we
right,
will be
thank you.
here, ready to
Thank you.
shout from the mountaintops.
Great speaking with you, and have an amazing day.
Thank you. You too.
Amazing.